Greetings, and welcome to A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. For this project, we are using the Ivan Walters reference book of 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Each day, we watch a movie associated with the date we are watching it on. And as it is the 7th of May, we are going to be watching Immortal Beloved from 1994, directed by Bernard Rose and starring Gary Oldman. Now, it is kind of impossible to not know who, first of all, Gary Oldman is or who Ludwig van Beethoven is. And the combination of these two entities coming together for one movie is definitely something of notoriety. I am aware of this particular movie, and up until I actually started watching this movie, I was pretty sure that I had seen it. But as I got more and more into the movie, a lot of it wasn't seeming as familiar. So there's probably some other biography about Beethoven that I remember, or another period piece that I was remembering about Gary Oldman doing. So we're going to go with, this is my first time watch for this movie. And like I'd already stated, not only does this movie star Gary Oldman, but it also goes on to star Jeroen Krabbe, Isabella Rossellini, Johanna der Steege, Christopher Fulford, and Marco Hofstensnyder. So to begin with, this movie is a bit of kind of a mystery of some sorts. After the death of Beethoven, who obviously, like I've mentioned, is Gary Oldman, his compatriot of Anton Felix Schindler, played by Jeroen Krabbe, takes it on himself to discover who his final passage is to his immortal beloved, which contains his actual final will, leaving everything to them. And most of the movie is him going from place to place, from stories to stories, trying to discover if he can find out who this immortal beloved is, because the name is not actually mentioned. As he arrives at different locations, we witness the life of Beethoven going through this in flashback sequences that are brought about by the area, or stories that are told of people when he arrives to say, hey, do you know about this? And they recite a story that brings to life the visuals of Beethoven throughout his life. Again, we deal with the life of a very tortured genius, early dealing with his disability of deafness and his craft that he tries to put forward in the world. There's some really cool sequences where they take away the sound and just leave a very low bass sort of reaction, so the audience gets to be immersed in the world of Beethoven himself, like not being able to hear anything except for whatever hits at a very low register, enough for him to just barely hear. A lot of sequences where he talks loud and people have to remind him that he's using a very loud voice and all that sort of thing. And it's just such an incredible visual too, because again, dealing with movies that are shot on locations, of real locations, of actual castles and actual cavernous buildings, which are gorgeous to see, and matched with fantastic costuming and set design, as well as a wonderful array of actors. Turns out to be a really cool biopic, and giving quite insight into Beethoven himself. And it is on the 7th of May, 1824, when we get to witness the premiere of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, which happens about an hour and 35 minutes into this 2-hour and 1-minute film. And as it is the 8th of May, we are going to be watching Mr. Roberts from 1955, directed by John Ford and Mervyn LeRoy, and starring Henry Fonda. So to begin with, I did know that this was, from the look of the actual poster, a movie that takes place near the end of World War II. Again, not knowing much other than the cast and the director, which was kind of an interesting thing to see that there's a movie that John Ford had co-directed with someone else. And again, the cast with being led by Henry Ford was a very intriguing idea. Needless to say, this would definitely be the first time that I've seen this movie. And like I had already mentioned, not only does this movie star Henry Ford, but it also stars James Cagney, William Powell, Jack Lemmon, Betsy Palmer, Ward Bond, and Philip Carey. So this movie takes place on the USS Reluctant, which is a Navy cargo ship in the Pacific during World War II. So we deal with a ship full of shenanigans going on. This is a movie based on a popular stage play based on a very popular novel. We have a very charismatic cast, as I mentioned, a great deal of them. Both Lieutenant Doug Roberts, played by Henry Fonda, and Captain Morton, played by James Cagney, are just two opposing ends just butting heads throughout this whole entire endeavor. Doug Roberts being the crew's proxy to try and, while doing their job, trying to work with a almost tyrannical sort of captain in Captain Morton. William Powell as Lieutenant Doc and Jack Lemmon as Ensign Frank Culver are great comedic foils and in-betweens, lighting up all the scenes that they're in. It's also kind of interesting, like I said, part of my interest in this movie was not only part of this project, but the fact that it is a John Ford movie that he co-directs with. Meaning, I definitely had to find out what the actual deal was behind that. As it turns out, a lot of the initial exteriors of the actual ship were filmed with John Ford. And early into production, apparently he and Henry Fonda got into a bit of a fight. Also coinciding with John Ford was battling health issues due to a gallbladder. Reverend Laurie was then brought in to try and finish off the rest of the film, trying to change his style to make it look more like a John Ford film to begin with. And as it turns out, there is a third uncredited director who is Joshua Logan, who turns out to be the original director of the stage production itself, to incorporate the movie to be more like the stage play than apparently what was happening. So an interesting little twists and turns in just that alone, from just seeing two names for one credit and then finding out there's a third person. It was just a fascinating little dive that I had to do after watching this movie. And as I'm watching this movie, I'm seeing a lot of parallels with future projects that carry on from this. A lot of the interaction and the character development and the personality types seem to lend themselves to what would become later movies and TV shows that, again, not 100% sure. I didn't go that deep into the dive of this movie, but again, I can see the parallels to future projects. And within this movie, the actual war ends, which happens to be on May 8th, 1945, and that happens about an hour and 21 minutes into this 2-hour and 3-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular year, it ended up winning for Best Supporting Actor for Jack Lemmon, and also got nominations for Best Picture and Best Sound Recording. And as it is May the 9th, we are going to be watching Nixon from 1995, directed by Oliver Stone and starring Anthony Hopkins. So to begin with, this again, we're dealing with a movie directed by Oliver Stone, so it was kind of hard to avoid the actual production of this particular movie. The fact that we had not only a very strong lead actor to portray a very interesting political person in our history, that it was also the amount of other names that were attached to this project that made it quite an interesting thing to follow. However, that being said, I did not get around to seeing this movie until this actual watch right now. And not only did I just mention that this movie stars Anthony Hopkins, but it also stars Joan Allen, Annabeth Gish, Marley Shelton, James Woods, Powers Booth, and Ed Harris. So that is just like a small portion of the names that are part of this particular production. Again, the names are just so
spectacular to see, especially when they pop up on the screen. And we go through the entire lifeline of Richard Nixon throughout this movie. We actually start at the incident at Watergate and how that starts to snowball on Nixon, but we jump back and forth throughout his entire lifetime, not only doing his early childhood, discovering how his family was, but his early days in politics, to his actually politicking, becoming president, and as things progress throughout his life, up until his removing himself from office, to his life after politics, to his eventual funeral, which is actually kind of interesting because the actual movie continues on while the credits have started rolling, so the audience is watching more of the movie as the credits roll through, as we basically experience his post political life and then his funeral. We get to see several different political faces of the time in archival footage. And that's the other thing about this movie. Oliver Stone does a fantastic job of using archival footage to fill out the reality of this movie. And even at parts, having his footage actually mirror that of the archival footage that surrounds the situation. He even sort of gets to a point where a lot of his photography is sort of Forrest Gumped, whereas he has like two political figures in a photo. And whereas one of the actors in our movie is portraying that person, he replaces the actor in the photo with the actual real political person, and it goes pretty seamlessly and whatnot. But it's a very entertaining thing to see. And again, everyone does a fantastic job. Mind you, at the very early parts of the movie, there was something that was bothering me about Anthony Hopkins, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Now, Anthony Hopkins does a physical impression of Nixon. He doesn't have any facial prosthetics or anything like that, but he holds himself. He holds his like jaw and all that sort of thing, and like his mannerisms look pretty good. But he doesn't do a audio impression of him. But the thing that it was is when they showed in like Oliver Stone's version of archival footage of Anthony Hopkins saying a speech as Nixon, obviously, his eyes somehow light up slightly, and it hit me just then. Oh right, Anthony Hopkins has very blue eyes, and that's what's throwing me off, is that they gave him brown contacts to be Nixon, which is kind of, I settled into the rest of the movie after that, but it was like up until that point, I'm like, what is wrong with what's wrong with Anthony Hopkins? There's something. Doesn't use a lot of prosthetics. We do have other actors portraying other political people that do put on some sort of prosthetic, and some do actually really good audio impressions of the people they are portraying. But it's not like the mainstay of this movie. And again, we're dealing with the life and times of Richard Nixon, and it becomes a very fascinating way that Oliver Stone brings this story to life. And again, we're dealing with known information and then some sort of alteration of like visuals and all that. We deal with like Nixon having like dream sequences where he remembers his mother and whatnot. It's kind of neat because a certain point of the movie is so far back in his past that it's all portrayed in black and white footage, which is kind of an interesting look. But yeah, it's a very interesting movie to have seen. And after the president orders the bombing of Cambodia, not only is he stunned by the political, the public's response to it, he visits the Lincoln Memorial at 4 a.m. on May 9th, 1970, where he talks to student protesters that are there. And that happens an hour and 46 minutes into this 3 hour and 12-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular year, it actually ended up getting nominations for Best Actor for Anthony Hopkins, Best Original Score, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Supporting Actress for Joan Allen.
All right, and as is the 10th of May, we are going to be watching Deep Impact from 1998, directed by Mimi Leader and starring Robert Duvall. So this is one of those big-time budget movies that has a clone. So this and the movie of Armageddon were both went into production pretty much about the same time and were actually released at the exact same time. Both world-ending disasters from outer space. So this one having the cast that it did definitely brought forward a lot of interest in the movie, and I did get to see this in the theater. Whereas I didn't see it very often since then, but it was always it was a nice thing to actually revisit after the last time that I have seen this movie. And like I'd already mentioned, not only does the movie star Robert Duvall, but it also stars Téa Leoni, Elijah Wood, Morgan Freeman, Vanessa Redgrave, Maximilian Schnell, and Lily Sobieski. So we're dealing with one of these big end-of-the-world sort of disaster movies that were fantastic to be for your popcorn viewing in the late 90s. And it was just such a fun movie to witness on the big screen. We're dealing with a really cool cast with a somewhat contrived sort of storyline hobbled together to make this a successful movie. Definitely entertaining, and again, seeing a great cast of different faces is always kind of cool to witness at any time when you're watching a movie. And of course, throughout that, we're going to have several different, like with an ensemble cast, we're going to have several different storylines all weaving together eventually to one point. Nobody really crisscross over like a lot of some of the disaster movies do. So we actually have the movies, the different storylines basically playing out their own, which happens to just coincide around with these two comets that are coming to hit the Earth. One is going to do tons of destruction, while another one is what they're referring to as a planet killer. And again, it's cool drama. It's really neat special effects. We got some really great destruction thing. There's actually one fantastic sequence where it's just two highways just littered with vehicles, and because of the day, they're actually all physically there. There's like hundreds and hundreds of cars in this long parking lot sort of situation of vehicles that just can't go anywhere because of the amount of people trying to move. But again, we're dealing with some great actors doing some pretty entertaining acting with this storyline that has a pretty cool representation of like scientific accuracy to a disaster story. So it's actually amateur astronomer and high school student Leo Biderman, who is Elijah Wood, is the first to discover these comets. He then speaks to his teacher about it, and then they contact authorities, and we get the whole entire ball rolling on this disaster movie. And that actually happens on May the 10th, 1998, which is like at the very beginning of this movie that is 2 hours in length. And as today is May 11th, we are going to be watching 500 Days of Summer from 2009, directed by Mark Webb and starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So my experience with this movie is that I did get to see this when it came out in the theaters. Being a fan of Joseph Gordon-Levitt, I definitely wanted to see this movie. It looked quirky to begin with from trailers, quite intriguing, and so this definitely wasn't my first experience, but I think I've only seen it maybe one other time, maybe twice prior to this showing. And as I had mentioned, not only does this movie star Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but also stars Zooey Deschanel, Chloe Grace Moretz, Jeffrey Arend, Matthew Gray Gubler, Clark Gregg, and Rachel Boston. So to boil this whole entire movie down, it is pretty much a cutesy little romantic comedy slash drama. We're dealing with a guy named Tom Henson, who is Joseph Gordon-Levitt, falling for his boss's assistants, who goes by the name of Summer Finn, played by Zooey Deschanel, where she feels she doesn't want to be in a girlfriend-style relationship. The two of them keep it casual for a while, and we go through the existence of Tom's life, dealing with having Summer in his life. We enter sort of really cool sort of fancy sort of sequences. We have this one sort of flash mob dance number break in it, which is beautifully executed because of Joseph Gordon-Levitt's very good dance style, along with the crowd. We have this really cool interaction where after a breakup and a sort of reconciliation at a party, we have like a split screen of expectation and reality happening at the exact same time. It's very cleverly shot. But as the movie rolls on, we end up having a final sort of reckoning between the two of them, and it's kind of weird to be seeing a sort of romantic story where it only actually turns out for one of our main characters. At one point, Tom leaves his job and starts looking for what he has actually gone to school for, which is trying to find an architectural job, and then eventually runs into at his favorite park, Summer, when she comes to talk to him, which happens on May 10th, 2010, which is about an hour and 21 minutes into this hour and 35-minute long movie. And as it is the 12th of May, we are going to be watching The Terminator from 1984, directed by James Cameron and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. So to begin with, it's kind of hard to not know about one of these definite mainstays in science fiction. It is a movie that not only started a career, well, technically at a start of a career for both James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger, as well as a great other number of people that are involved in this movie. Personally, I did not see this movie on the big screen for quite a few years. I believe it was even after I had seen Terminator 2 is when I finally got around to seeing this, so I'd seen it mostly on home video. I'm pretty sure the first time I saw this was a VHS rental over at a friend's house for a sleepover. But until around Terminator 2, I don't think I actually saw a widescreen version of this movie until that point. So up until then, I'd always seen a pan and scan or some sort of horribly edited up version for late night television or something like that. But definitely one of the favorites in my science fiction movies. So that being said, not only does this movie star Arnold Schwarzenegger, but it also stars Michael Biehn, Linda Hamilton, Aaron Bowen, Paul Winfield, Lance Henriksen, and Bess Mota. So at its base, we're dealing with a time travel, sort of almost kind of like a heist sort of movie. We have two travelers from the distant future coming into the present day of 1984 and trying to hunt down or protect one particular soul that has an effect upon the outcome of the future. Now, this movie is so beautifully done on what it is allowed to. Its budget is very minor. I mean, actually quite impressive for what it is, and it's even more impressive what James Cameron pulls off for it. He deals with all of the tricks of the trade. Future versions of James Cameron's work are all basically blueprinted from what we see in The Terminator. We get not only a great cropping of wonderful character actors that James Cameron loves to use throughout. We actually have quite a few of the core characters involved in this particular movie to begin with, but he uses his budget to his advantage. We get fantastic rear screen projection effects, a lot of really great cool stunts, some really amazing special effects, both in miniature form and in slow motion animation. We got some great animatronics, some fantastic makeup, and some really cool looking puppetry also going on with this movie. And again, centered around this dramatic action-packed movie that moves at a pretty much non-slowing rate from the get-go. And this movie is one of those movies that sets up a franchise. Whether it knows it or not at the time, this is the beginning of it, and everything springs off to it. After we hit past a certain point, things start to twist around and become a little different. The movie franchise ends up rewriting itself and then retconning itself back and forth all over the place. But this is what we have as the core ideals of the universe of which this movie exists, and it's such an entertaining time. It is quite dated. Again, we are dealing with a 1984 movie, and this definitely looks like a 1984 movie, which is quite impressive to begin with. But as we move forward, we progress through time to get to subsequent sequels and whatnot. So it works perfectly well for this movie being locked in the time that it is, because, again, future versions take place along its current timeline in time. So everything ages appropriately, which is a fascinating thing that one rarely gets on a movie that lasts this long. And it's at the very beginning of the movie when our two time travelers arrive in Los Angeles on May 12th, 1984, which is about 3 minutes into this 1 hour and 47-minute movie. And as it is the 13th of May, we are going to be watching Bridge on the River Kwai from 1957, directed by David Lean and starring William Holden. So to be totally honest, the reason I came about to seeing this movie at such a young age is the Star Wars connection of Alec Guinness. I did see a scene of this movie and like, hey, that guy looks familiar. Whoever I was watching it with, obviously an older person at the time, pointed out that, hey, that's the guy that plays Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. And I probably sat through the rest of that movie. And I'm pretty sure that I had seen the movie a few times on regular commercial television, which means this movie was on for like a whole entire slot of an afternoon movie. Probably started at 11 and like finished at like probably 2:30 in the afternoon when you throw in commercials and all that. But the thing is, at the time that I'd seen it, it was probably only just full screen versions, and it wasn't until much later when I finally got around to seeing how grandly epic this movie looks in its widescreen edition. So whereas I obviously have not had the privilege yet to see this movie in the theater, but it was a enjoyable thing that I have seen several times throughout my life. And as I had already mentioned, not only does this movie star William Holden, but it also stars Alec Guinness, Jake Hawkins, Sisu Hayakawa, James Donald, Jeffrey Horn, and Andre Monreal. So the movie centers around a large group of British POWs led by Colonel Nicholson, that is Alec Guinness, and they come upon Allied POWs, one of which being Commander Shears, which is William Holden. Due to a conflict that arises between Nicholson and the camp leader of Colonel Sato, who is played by Sisu Hayakawa, the British forces are put into creating a bridge to connect over the River Kwai, and using his most British of British stylings, Colonel Nicholson leads his men to build a very impressive, strong structured bridge. Meanwhile, while this is going on, Shears ends up escaping, which is a very rarity thing from this particular POW camp. He actually makes it to Ceylon, which is a Allied training camp for almost guerrilla warfare. And he's brought in by them to be forced to return with other British commandos to destroy the bridge. And this movie is just so captivating to witness. Again, we're dealing with a movie that is shot in like CinemaScope, so it's very thick bars even on a regular rectangular screen. So you get this huge wrapping around shots, shot in like the middle of the jungle over an actual river and an actual physically built set of this giant bridge that was put together for the production of this movie. Great cast, great chemistry. There's a lot of like witty moments in it, but the movie is also so filled with drama and determination from everyone trying to get their own personal goals across. And again, like it's an acting tour de force. It's just so great of a movie to watch, and I'm kind of happy that I got to see it at a young age, because I got to, each time watching it, became a little more aware of what was actually happening in it. And as I got older, I knew more about the actual situation, the world situation at the time, to be more than just this really cool war-esque type movie that I saw originally. And it is the day of May 13th, 1943, when the actual bridge does get destroyed. Sorry, spoiler alert. And that happens about 2 hours and 24 minutes into this 2 hour and 47-minute movie. And when it came to the Academy Awards for that particular season, it ended up winning for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for Alec Guinness, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Score, Best Film Editing, and Best Cinematography. It also ended up getting nominations for Best Actor in a Supporting Role for Sisu Hayakawa. And on that note, we're going to wrap up this particular episode and look off to the future, see what movie we're going to be watching for tomorrow, which is the 14th of May, and that is going to be Beyond the Sea from 2004. So until next time, go see a movie. This has been A Year of Movies, a Planet Geek production. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Once again, another thanks to Ivan Walters for his book, A Year of Movies, 365 films to watch on the day they happened. Look for it online or at your local bookstore. Follow Planet Geek Productions on all of our social media. Through Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, and Letterboxd, search for Planet Geek Productions. On X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, search for Planet Geek Pod. You can also reach out to us through email at planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and until next time, go see a movie.